July 2nd, 1955. A perfectly ordinary morning at New York International Airport. The sun is out. The air is warm. Families wave goodbye through the terminal windows. 57 passengers boarded a Pan Am Douglas DC-4. Businessmen, families, a young couple on their honeymoon, an elderly woman visiting her daughter in Florida for the very first time. Their destination, Miami, just 3 hours away. A routine flight, nothing special. The engines roared. The plane lifted off the runway. The passengers settled into their seats. And then it vanished. No distress signal, no wreckage, no emergency beacon, no bodies, no explanation. Gone. Completely. As if the plane never existed at all. The world grieved. An investigation was opened, then quietly closed. And for 37 years, nothing. But then, in 1992, something happened at an airport in Venezuela that would shake the entire aviation world. The same plane, Flight 914, appeared on radar and landed, with every single passenger still alive, still seated, still wearing their 1955 clothes. They had no idea that 37 years had passed. Today, we investigate this story from the very beginning. We examine every claim, every piece of evidence, every witness, and what we find is something far more shocking than time travel. Stay with me. To understand what happened in 1992, we need to go back to the beginning. 1955, the golden age of aviation. Pan Am World Airways, known simply as Pan Am, was the most prestigious airline in the world. Their blue and white aircraft connected continents. Their pilots were heroes. Flying was glamorous, exciting, and safe. Pan Am had never lost a passenger on a domestic route. Their safety record was impeccable. Flight 914 was scheduled as a simple domestic run, New York to Miami. The aircraft, a Douglas DC-4, a powerful four-engine propeller plane, one of the most reliable commercial aircraft ever built. In the early 1950s, DC-4s had crossed the Atlantic hundreds of times without incident. The flight crew were experienced professionals. Captain John Banks had logged over 8,000 hours of flight time. At 9:31 a.m., Flight 914 received clearance from New York Tower and began its takeoff roll. The plane lifted cleanly into the morning sky. Passengers looked out their windows at the city below. Air traffic control tracked the aircraft heading south along the coast. All communications normal, all systems reported operational. And then, approximately 1 hour and 40 minutes into the flight, Flight 914 simply disappeared from radar. No final transmission, no distress call, no mayday, nothing. Within hours, the United States Coast Guard launched one of the largest search operations in peacetime history. Aircraft swept the Atlantic coastline for days. Ships dragged nets across the ocean floor. They found nothing. Not a seat cushion, not a fuel slick, not a single piece of wreckage. 57 passengers, 5 crew members, a 30-ton aircraft, completely erased from existence. Pan Am American Airways officially listed the flight as lost at sea, presumed crashed due to unknown catastrophic failure. All 62 people aboard were declared dead. And slowly, painfully, the world moved on. Flight 914 became a footnote, a tragic, unexplained accident in the early history of commercial aviation.
March 9th, 1992, Caracas International Airport, Venezuela. Senior Air Traffic Controller Juan de la Corte is sitting at his radar station. A quiet Sunday morning. A few domestic flights. Nothing unusual on the screen. And then a blip appears. An aircraft approaching from the north, moving fast, descending toward the airport. No flight plan filed, no radio contact established, no transponder identification. De la Corte switches to the emergency frequency and calls static. He tries again, and then a voice crackles through his headset. A voice that sounds confused, almost frightened. This is Pan American Flight 914. Departed New York this morning, destination Miami, Florida. We appear to be off course. Please advise our position. De la Corte stares at his screen. Pan Am. He types the name into his system. Pan Am had gone bankrupt and ceased operations in December 1991. There were no Pan Am flights. He responds carefully. Flight 914, you are currently approaching Caracas, Venezuela. Please identify yourself and state your aircraft registration. A long pause, then the pilot's voice, now unmistakably panicked. Venezuela, that is impossible. We departed New York this morning at 9:31. We cannot be in Venezuela. What is the date today? De la Corte tells him, March 9th, 1992. The line goes completely silent for almost 10 seconds. Then the pilot says, and these words, according to witnesses, still give them chills today. My God, what has happened to us? Ground crew at Caracas Airport later reported that the aircraft made a low pass over the runway, clearly visible to multiple witnesses. They described an old propeller aircraft, 4 engines, Pan Am livery, the famous blue and white design that hadn't been seen in the skies for years. Through the oval windows of the aircraft, witnesses claimed they could see passengers, confused passengers, pressing their faces to the glass, looking out at a modern airport they didn't recognize. Emergency vehicles were scrambled. The airport went on full alert, and then the aircraft climbed sharply, turned north, and disappeared back into the clouds. It was never seen again. The only physical evidence found at the airport, a small pocket calendar lying on the runway near where the plane had passed overhead. The calendar was dated 1955. The aviation world was in shock. News spread globally. Time travel, wormholes, government cover-ups, Bermuda Triangle. Every explanation was on the table, but here is where our investigation truly begins. I want to be honest with you. When I first came across this story, I felt what you probably felt watching this video. A chill, a sense of wonder, the feeling that maybe, just maybe, the world is stranger and more mysterious than we think. But I'm not here to simply tell you stories. I'm here to find the truth. So I started investigating, and what I found changed everything. Investigation Step 1: Pan-American Airways official records. I searched the complete digitized archive of Pan Am World Airways flight records held at the University of Miami's Otto G. Richter Library, the official repository for all Pan Am historical documents. Result: there is no Flight 914 in the Pan Am record. No DC-4 with that flight number. No record of a disappearance on July 2nd, 1955.
Investigation Step 2: 1955 American Newspaper Archives. I searched the complete digitized archives of the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Miami Herald, the Chicago Tribune, and over 200 regional American newspapers from July 1955. A commercial aircraft disappearing over American waters with 57 people aboard would have been front-page news across the entire country. Investigation Step 3: Juan de la Corte, air traffic controller, the alleged eyewitness at the center of the 1992 incident, the man who supposedly spoke to the ghost plane. I searched Venezuelan Aviation Authority employment records, international air traffic controller certification databases, airline industry directories from 1992. Result: Juan de la Corte does not appear in any verifiable record. Investigation Step 4: the pocket calendar, the only physical evidence, a 1955 calendar found on the runway. Result: never photographed by any official source, never submitted as evidence to any authority, never independently verified. Its existence is known only through the same publication that broke the original story. Investigation Step 5: tracing the source. This is where everything falls into place. The story of Flight 914 first appeared in print on May 7, 1985, in a publication called The Weekly World News. The Weekly World News. Let me tell you about this publication. It was a supermarket tabloid sold next to the checkout line between the candy bars and the celebrity gossip magazines. Its front pages featured stories about a woman in Ohio who gave birth to an alien, about Bigfoot being elected mayor of a small town in Alaska, about Elvis being spotted working at a gas station in Memphis. The Weekly World News published fiction, openly, proudly, entertainingly fiction. On their own website, they described themselves as, quote, the authority on aliens, mutants, conspiracy theories, biblical prophecies, and wayward politicians. The Flight 914 story was published in 1985, then republished with slight variations in 1993, then again in 1999. Each republication added new details, new witnesses, new evidence. The story grew and evolved, as good fiction always does. And then the internet arrived, and a tabloid fiction from 1985 became, for millions of people, established historical fact entirely. Flight 914, the time-traveling ghost plane, never existed. The disappearance, fiction. The return, fiction. The calendar, fiction. All of it. Why did hundreds of millions of people believe this story? This isn't a story that fooled a handful of people in 1985. This is a story that in 2024, because Flight 914 touched something ancient and deep inside the human mind, the fear of disappearing. Think about it. The idea that you could simply step onto a plane, fly into the sky, and cease to exist with no explanation, no warning,
no goodbye, is one of the most primal fears in the modern world. We understand car accidents, we understand illness, but vanishing completely? And Flight 914 offered something extraordinary in response to that fear: a return.
The passengers came back. Against all logic, against all physics, they came back. That is not just a mystery story, that is a resurrection story. And resurrection stories are the oldest stories human beings have ever told. The story also taps into our deep suspicion that the universe is hiding something from us, that there are laws of physics we don't understand yet. Quantum mechanics tells us that at the subatomic level, time behaves in ways that defy common sense. Einstein showed us that time is not absolute. It moves differently depending on speed and gravity. So when someone tells us a plane flew through a crack in time, part of our brain says impossible, and another part says, but what if? That what if is the most powerful force in human storytelling, and Weekly World News, whatever else you think of them, understood that power completely. Here is what I want you to understand. Flight 1914 was a hoax, but the mystery it represented, the mystery of aircraft and people vanishing from the sky without explanation, that mystery is absolutely, verifiably real. Malaysian Airlines Flight MH370, March 8, 2014, a Boeing 777 carrying 239 passengers and crew disappeared somewhere over the Indian Ocean. The most sophisticated search operation in aviation history found fragments, but never the main wreckage, never the black boxes, never a conclusive explanation for what happened. Flight 19, December 5, 1945. 5 United States Navy Avenger torpedo bombers depart Fort Lauderdale, Florida on a routine training mission. All 5 aircraft disappear over the Bermuda Triangle. 14 men vanish without a trace. A rescue seaplane sent to find them also disappears. 13 more men gone. The official Navy investigation concluded, cause unknown. Amelia Earhart, July 2, 1937. The most famous female aviator in history disappeared over the central Pacific Ocean during her attempt to circumnavigate the globe. Her aircraft, her navigator, and any wreckage are never conclusively found. Researchers have spent 87 years searching, multiple expeditions, millions of dollars. No definitive answer. She simply vanished. These cases are real, the families are real, the questions are real, and unlike Flight 1914, they remain genuinely, completely unsolved. The sky does hold secrets, real ones. Flight 1914 taught us something important. Not about time travel, not about the Bermuda Triangle, not about wormholes or government cover-ups. It taught us about ourselves, about how desperately we want the world to be mysterious and strange and full of things we cannot explain, about how a great story told with confidence in vivid detail can travel across decades and continents and become accepted as historical truth by millions of intelligent people. In an age of misinformation and viral falsehoods, the story of Flight 1914 is more relevant than ever. Question what you read, trace stories back to their sources, demand evidence. But also, never stop asking, what if? Because the real world, properly examined, is stranger and more wonderful than any tabloid fiction could ever be. If this video made you think, subscribe to this channel, because every single week we go deeper into real mysteries, real disappearances, real evidence, and real questions that nobody has yet been able to answer.